What if the woman who silently cleaned your luxurious mansion, the one you barely noticed, harbored a secret ambition so fierce it could shatter your preconceived notions and awaken a part of your soul you thought long dead? This is the story of a billionaire who discovered an extraordinary mind in the most unexpected of places. A discovery that would change not only her life, but his, forever. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Alexander Sterling's deep voice resonated in the otherwise silent kitchen. Elena Vance jumped, startled, her pencil clattering to the polished marble floor. The master of the house, dressed in a silk navy blue robe, his dark hair disheveled from sleep, observed her from the doorway. Her heart pounded against her ribs. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry." She quickly closed her constitutional law textbook. "I was just finishing up." She hadn't realized "You didn't answer my question," he interrupted, his gaze sharp, assessing, as he approached the massive kitchen island where she sat. Elena took a deep breath, preparing herself to be dismissed, fired on the spot. 3 years of impeccable work, of silent dedication, about to end because she dared to study in secret. "I'm studying, sir. After my chores. I never neglect my responsibilities. I promise you." Alexander picked up one of her heavy textbooks, examining it with a surprising curiosity. Instead of annoyance, his dark eyes reflected a flicker of genuine interest. "Law?" he asked, his voice tinged with surprise. "Yes, sir. It's a distance learning program. I've always wanted to be a lawyer." An uncomfortable silence filled the vast kitchen. Outside, the gentle patter of rain against the large windows was the only sound. It was nearly 2 in the morning. "Why do you study in secret, Elena?" She lowered her gaze, nervously arranging her scattered papers. "I didn't want to bother anyone. Mrs. Sterling, your mother. She believes it's not my place." Alexander frowned, a familiar tightness around his jaw. He knew his mother's rigid, often cruel attitude towards the household staff all too well. "How long have you been studying like this?" 2 years, sir. I'm halfway through my degree." Alexander poured himself a glass of water from the state-of-the-art refrigerator, silently processing this unexpected revelation. For 3 years, this quiet, unassuming woman had meticulously cleaned his house, served his meals, ironed his shirts, and he barely even knew her name. Now, he discovered she possessed a hidden life, a fierce ambition, dreams that extended far beyond the opulent, suffocating walls of his mansion. "My father was a lawyer," he said finally, his voice surprisingly soft. "He had an entire library filled with law books that no one has used since he passed away." Elena looked at him, unsure how to respond, her heart still pounding. "You could use it if you like. It's certainly better than this corner of the kitchen." Before Elena could even begin to express her gratitude, Alexander's phone rang, its sharp, urgent tone shattering the quiet intimacy of the moment. His expression instantly changed, his usual cool composure returning. "What? When?" "I'll be there immediately." He hung up, his face pale. "My mother had a stroke. She's at the hospital." "I'm so sorry, sir," Elena responded, her voice filled with a genuine, unexpected concern, despite her difficult, often strained relationship with Mrs. Eleanor Sterling. "You'll have to prepare the guest room tomorrow," he said, his voice already reverting to its usual brisk, businesslike tone. "When she recovers, she'll be coming to live here. She'll need constant care." Elena nodded, a cold knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. Mrs. Sterling's permanent presence in the mansion meant the end of her secret nighttime sanctuary, and quite possibly, the end of her ambitious, hard-won studies. What do you think Alexander will do now that he knows Elena's secret? Will he truly support her dreams? Or will his mother's influence and the rigid expectations of his world prove too strong? And how will Elena navigate this new, even more challenging dynamic? Share your most insightful predictions and burning questions in the comments below. The following weeks, Elena Vance visited her family on her day off, a precious, fleeting respite. In their small, cramped apartment in Roxbury, a working-class neighborhood of Boston, her mother, Mrs. Vance, prepared traditional tamales while listening to her daughter's anxieties. Mrs. Sterling looks at me as if I were dirt on her expensive shoes. Mom, Elena confessed, her voice tight with frustration. And now she'll be living in the house, watching my every move. Mrs. Vance continued to knead the dough, her hands, wrinkled from years of domestic work, moving with a practiced, comforting rhythm. Don't let her take away what's yours, child, she said, her voice firm, unwavering. Your studies are sacred. Your father always believed in the power of education. Elena thought of her father, a hard-working immigrant who had passed away without ever being able to afford a lawyer when he was unjustly accused of theft, a memory that still fueled her fierce determination. That's why I want to be a lawyer, Mom. To defend people like Dad, people who have no voice. Back at the Sterling estate, Elena meticulously cleaned the opulent guest suite where Mrs. Eleanor Sterling would soon be installed. The silk sheets, the mahogany furniture, the priceless antique paintings, all a stark, painful contrast to the small, shared room she and her younger sister, Sophia, occupied in their crowded Roxbury apartment. That night, as she was organizing the vast, silent library, a task assigned to her by the head housekeeper, Alexander entered quietly, his presence startling her. Elena, I've been thinking about your situation, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to his usual brisk, businesslike tone. It's not fair for you to abandon your studies because of my mother's arrival. She didn't know what to say, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. You can use the library at night, he continued, gesturing to the towering shelves filled with leather-bound volumes. No one ever comes in here, not even me usually. Elena gazed at the rows of books, some of which she knew would be invaluable for her classes. Thank you, sir. But, Alexander, he corrected her softly. When we talk about your studies, call me Alexander. I'm not your boss in that regard. But your mother. My mother will have to adapt, he stated, a surprising firmness in his voice. Besides, I'll speak with the head housekeeper to adjust your schedule. You could finish your tasks earlier in the afternoon, leaving you more time for your studies. For the very first time in years, Elena felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile belief that perhaps, just perhaps, someone truly valued her dreams, her aspirations. I don't know how to thank you, sir. Alexander. He offered a rare, almost shy smile. Perhaps you could tell me someday why you chose law, he suggested, his gaze lingering on hers. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent sound. Mrs. Eleanor Sterling had arrived, accompanied by a retinue of nurses and a mountain of expensive luggage. Elena's brief moment of hope flickered, overshadowed by a new wave of uncertainty and apprehension. With the formidable matriarch's arrival, a new, challenging chapter was about to begin. What do you think of Alexander's unexpected support for Elena? Is it a genuine act of kindness, or does he have a hidden motive? And how will Elena navigate the complex dynamics of the Sterling household, especially with the imperious Mrs. Eleanor Sterling now in residence? Share your most insightful predictions and passionate opinions in the comments below. April arrived in Boston, bringing with it a different, more challenging routine for everyone at the Sterling estate. Mrs. Eleanor Sterling, now firmly ensconced in the guest suite, observed Elena Vance's every move like a hawk, her disapproval a palpable presence in the otherwise silent mansion. That cup is improperly washed. Do it again, she ordered one morning, her voice sharp, pointing to an imaginary smudge on a pristine teacup. Elena took a deep breath and returned to the kitchen, her patience wearing thin. It was the third mistake she had supposedly made that morning. The lady is unbearable today. Rosa, the head cook, muttered under her breath, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a frown. Like every day since she arrived, Elena responded, rewashing the already impeccable cup, a sigh escaping her lips. That night, Elena cautiously entered the library, the vast, silent room her only refuge. The desk lamps cast a soft, inviting glow on the ancient, leather-bound books. She sat down and opened her laptop, a gift from her previous, kinder employer. "I thought you wouldn't come." Alexander's voice startled her. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here." Elena quickly rose, gathering her things. "I can study another time." "No, stay," Alexander said, closing the book he was reading. "I was actually waiting for you. I found these books of my father's that might help you." On the ornate mahogany desk lay 3 imposing tomes of constitutional law, exactly what she needed for her upcoming crucial exam. "Thank you, but," she began, her voice filled with a familiar hesitation. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Alexander paused, his gaze thoughtful. "My father came from Fall River with nothing," he finally said, his voice surprisingly soft. "He studied at night while working during the day. No one believed in him, except for one kind professor who lent him books." He paused again, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "I suppose this is my way of honoring his memory, of paying it forward." For the very first time, Elena saw the man behind the formidable facade of Mr. Sterling, the master of the house. 2 weeks later, as she was leaving the mansion to buy medication for Mrs. Sterling, a familiar, unwelcome figure waited for her at the corner. "Elena, my queen, you look stunning." Mark Johnson, her abusive ex-boyfriend, his slicked-back hair and cheap leather jacket a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings, approached her with a leering, predatory smile. "What are you doing here, Mark?" Elena recoiled, taking a step back, her heart pounding with a sudden, chilling fear. "I came to see you, my love. I miss you," he said, trying to embrace her. "We broke up a year ago, Mark. Please, just leave me in peace." Mark's expression shifted, his smile turning into a menacing sneer. "I saw you with your boss the other day, Elena. Very cozy. Did you finally sleep your way to the top? Is that why you don't want to come back to me? You're insane." Elena tried to push past him, but Mark grabbed her arm, his grip like steel. "You'd better be nice to me, Elena. You work in a rich man's house. We could benefit from that. Both of us." "Everything all right, Elena?" Daniel Carter, Alexander's business partner and close friend, asked, stepping out of his car, his gaze sharp and assessing. Mark immediately released Elena's arm and quickly walked away, but not before whispering, his voice a venomous hiss. "This isn't over, Elena. Not by a long shot. What do you think of Eleanor Sterling's harsh treatment of Elena? Is it just an old woman's bitterness? Or is there a deeper, more sinister motive at play? And what about Mark's sudden reappearance? How will this dangerous ghost from Elena's past impact her already fragile situation?" Share your most insightful predictions and passionate opinions in the comments below. The nights in the library became a cherished, almost sacred routine for Elena Vance. Alexander Sterling wasn't always present, his demanding business schedule often keeping him late at the office. But when their paths did cross, amidst the towering shelves of ancient, leather-bound books, their conversations, initially hesitant and formal, began to flow with a surprising, engaging ease. "It's fascinating how labor law has evolved over the centuries," Alexander commented one night, his voice a low murmur in the otherwise silent room, as he observed Elena meticulously highlighting passages in a complex legal text. "It's what I want to specialize in," Elena responded, her eyes shining with a quiet, passionate enthusiasm. "There's so much abuse against workers, especially domestic employees. So many injustices." An uncomfortable silence followed her pointed remark, the unspoken realities of their own household hanging heavy in the air. "I'm sorry," she quickly added, a flush rising on her cheeks. "I didn't mean to imply that you—" "No, you're right," he interrupted, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I've never really questioned the working conditions of my own staff. I suppose it's easy not to see what doesn't directly affect us." That night, their conversation extended late into the early hours of the morning, a shared exploration of ideas, of dreams, of vulnerabilities neither had ever dared to voice before. "Son, I need to talk to you," Mrs. Eleanor Sterling announced during breakfast a few days later, her voice sharp, her gaze fixed on Alexander. Elena, discreetly serving coffee, tried to make herself invisible, but she could feel the matriarch's cold, appraising eyes on her. Daniel Carter told me about a perfect match for you, Mrs. Sterling continued, completely ignoring Elena's presence. Isabel Davenport, Eduardo Davenport's daughter. She owns an art gallery, comes from an excellent, well-respected family. A suitable family. Mother, please not now, Alexander sighed, his voice tight with a familiar frustration. You've been alone for 2 years, Alexander. It's time you rebuilt your life. I've already invited Isabel to dinner tomorrow night. Here, at the estate. Alexander looked at Elena, who quickly averted her gaze, her heart sinking, though she tried desperately to maintain her professional composure. As you wish, mother, he finally conceded, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. The dinner with Isabel Davenport was exactly as Alexander had expected. Elegant, cultured, and utterly, soul-crushingly, boring. Isabel, though undeniably beautiful and intelligent, represented everything he had come to despise about his privileged social circle. The superficial conversations, the calculated alliances, the obsession with appearances. Your mother showed me photos of your project in Philadelphia, Isabel commented, her voice a smooth, practiced purr. It's impressive, though perhaps a bit too ambitious for the current market. Throughout the long, tedious evening, Alexander found his thoughts drifting, again and again, to his late-night conversations with Elena in the quiet sanctuary of the library, to her sharp intellect, her quiet determination, her unwavering passion for justice. That same night, Elena received the results of her midterm exams. She had obtained the highest grades in her entire generation, despite her incredibly challenging circumstances. Unable to contain her excitement, her joy, she ran to the library, hoping to share the news with Alexander, forgetting, for a fleeting moment, the rigid social barriers that separated them, the unspoken rules of their unconventional arrangement. She found him there, staring blankly at some architectural blueprints, a glass of untouched whiskey by his side. I did it! She exclaimed, her voice ringing with a triumphant, infectious joy, momentarily forgetting all formalities. First in my class. Alexander, startled by her sudden appearance, by the sheer, unadulterated radiance on her face, stood up and, without thinking, impulsively embraced her. Congratulations, Elena. I knew you could do it. For a brief, breathtaking instant, the world around them disappeared. There was only them, two souls connected by a shared, unspoken understanding, a mutual admiration that transcended their disparate worlds, until a sharp, disapproving cough shattered the moment, pulling them brutally back to reality. Mrs. Eleanor Sterling stood in the library doorway, leaning heavily on her ornate cane, her face a mask of icy, unadulterated fury. Alexander, I need to speak with you. Immediately, Elena lowered her gaze, her cheeks burning, acutely, painfully aware that she had just crossed an invisible, yet formidable line, a line that would, undoubtedly, change everything. What do you think of this escalating tension and Mrs. Sterling's dramatic intervention? Will Alexander finally stand up to his mother and fight for his feelings for Elena? Or will he succumb to the pressures of his family and his social class? And how will Elena navigate this dangerous new dynamic? Share your most passionate predictions and heartfelt hopes in the comments below. What happens when a forbidden embrace ignites a mother's fury, threatening to destroy not just a budding romance, but a young woman's hard-won dreams? And what if a dangerous ghost from the past resurfaced, his venomous threats adding another layer of peril to an already impossible situation? What in God's name was that? Mrs. Eleanor Sterling slammed the heavy study door shut, her voice a low, dangerous hiss, her eyes blazing with an icy fury as she confronted her son. Embracing the maid as if she were one of us? Have you completely lost your senses, Alexander? Alexander Sterling ran a frustrated hand through his dark hair, his carefully constructed composure crumbling. Mother, we were just celebrating her grades. It's not what you think. Do you take me for a fool? Mrs. Sterling struck the polished marble floor with her ornate cane, the sharp sound echoing in the tense silence. I've seen the way you look at her, Alexander. The way your father used to look at that secretary before he abandoned us, before he destroyed our family. Don't compare these situations, Mother. This is completely different. Mrs. Sterling stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous, threatening whisper. Listen to me very carefully, Alexander. If you continue with this inappropriate friendship, I will withdraw my support for your Philadelphia project. You know that without my signature, without my backing as a primary partner, you'll lose the entire investment. Everything you've worked for. Alexander stared at her, incredulous. Are you blackmailing me? I'm saving you from making the same catastrophic mistake your father did, she retorted, her eyes cold, unyielding, as she turned towards the door. That girl, Elena, she's just looking to climb the social ladder. It wouldn't be the first time a servant seduced the master of the house. After that brutal confrontation, Alexander began to meticulously avoid the late-night sessions in the library. When he did encounter Elena in the vast, silent hallways of the mansion, he barely exchanged a few curt, formal words, his guilt a heavy, suffocating weight. The warm, easy connection they had begun to forge, the shared moments of intellectual intimacy, now felt like a distant, impossible dream. He hasn't come to the library in 2 weeks, Elena commented to Rosa, the head cook, one evening, as they prepared dinner together, her voice tinged with a quiet sadness. Mr. Alexander is very busy with Miss Isabel Davenport now, dear, Rosa responded, her own voice carefully neutral, though her eyes held a flicker of sympathy. They say there might be an engagement announcement soon. Elena felt a sharp, unexpected pang in her chest, a pain she quickly tried to ignore. What did she expect? That a billionaire would truly fall for her? That their disparate worlds could somehow, magically, merge? As she was leaving for her day off, Mark Johnson, her abusive ex-boyfriend, waited for her again at the corner, his presence a chilling, unwelcome shadow. Well, if it isn't my queen, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, as he sauntered towards her. Did you get tired of chasing your rich boss yet? Leave me alone, Mark. He grabbed her arm, his grip like steel, pulling her closer. I know what you're trying to do, Elena. Do you really think that rich man is going to save you from your miserable life? That he's going to make you his Cinderella? He sneered, his face contorted with a jealous rage. When he gets tired of you, and he will get tired of you, I'll still be here, waiting. I'll never come back to you, she retorted, wrenching her arm free, her voice trembling but resolute. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing, between Mr. Sterling and me. Old Mrs. Sterling wouldn't like to hear that her perfect, society-approved future daughter-in-law has been replaced by the help, now would she? He threatened, his eyes glittering with a cruel, malicious intent. It would be a terrible shame if you lost your job, Miss Future Lawyer. A terrible, terrible shame. What if a night designed for triumph became a stage for public humiliation, and a desperate woman, cornered by treachery and false accusations, was forced to fight not just for her reputation, but for her very survival? Could a hidden truth, brought to light in the most dramatic of ways, finally expose the villains and change the course of destiny? August arrived in Boston with the announcement that Alexander Sterling had won a prestigious architectural award for his innovative, sustainable designs. The Sterling estate buzzed with preparations for a grand celebration, an event that would bring together the city's most prominent businessmen, architects, and socialites. I want everything to be absolutely impeccable, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling ordered the household staff, her voice sharp, her gaze sweeping critically over every detail. The most important people in the country will be here tonight. For Elena Vance, those days were an exhausting blur. She barely had time to study for her upcoming exams, let alone dream of attending the lavish library sessions that had once been her sanctuary. She now primarily confined her studies to her small, cramped room, a stark contrast to the opulent grandeur of the rest of the mansion. The night of the celebration, the Sterling estate shimmered with an almost ethereal glow. From the bustling kitchen, Elena observed the guests arriving in their luxury cars, their designer gowns and expensive jewels sparkling under the crystal chandeliers. Isabel Davenport on Alexander's arm, looked particularly dazzling in a vibrant red dress, her laughter echoing through the grand hall, her diamonds a brilliant, almost blinding display of wealth and status. "Elena, please take this tray to the main salon," Rosa, the head cook, instructed, her voice kind but firm. With her simple uniform perfectly pressed, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, Elena discreetly mingled among the distinguished guests, offering delicate canapés. As she approached Alexander, their eyes met briefly, a fleeting, almost imperceptible connection, before he quickly averted his gaze, a flicker of something unreadable, pain, regret, in their depths. He seemed almost pained to see her there, a servant in his glittering world. Alexander Sterling, an architect with a profound social conscience. A journalist commented to a group of captivated listeners. His project in Philadelphia will integrate affordable housing with innovative cultural spaces, a true testament to his visionary approach. "My son has always possessed a remarkable sensitivity for just causes," Mrs. Sterling interjected, her gaze shifting meaningfully towards Isabel Davenport, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "And soon, we will have another, even more joyous celebration, won't we, Alexander?" He seemed visibly uncomfortable with his mother's pointed insinuation of an impending engagement, but he didn't contradict her, his silence a tacit, painful confirmation. Elena was heading back to the kitchen, her heart a heavy ache in her chest, when she heard a sudden commotion at the main entrance. "Let me pass. I want to see Elena Vance." Her blood ran cold as she recognized Mark Johnson's slurred, aggressive voice. "Security!" the head butler shouted, his voice sharp with alarm. Mark, clearly intoxicated, struggled violently with two imposing security guards. "Let me go. Everyone should know the truth about that sanctimonious little slut." "Elena!" Alexander rushed towards the entrance, his face a mask of cold fury. "What is happening here?" "Ah, there's the millionaire!" Mark roared, his eyes blazing with a crazed, jealous light. "Has your precious servant told you yet that she steals your things to pay for her fancy studies? Ask her where she gets the money for her books, for her expensive laptop." The distinguished guests stared, aghast, their polite conversations abruptly silenced. Elena, paralyzed by shame and a sudden, overwhelming fear, dropped the tray she was carrying, the delicate crystal glasses shattering on the polished marble floor with a deafening crash. "Get him out of here," Alexander ordered, his voice a low, dangerous growl. But the damage was already done. The insidious whispers, the shocked, judgmental glances, spread through the glittering crowd like wildfire. Mrs. Sterling, pale with humiliation, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, swayed precariously. "Mother!" Alexander rushed to her side as she began to collapse. "Call an ambulance!" someone shouted, their voice echoing in the suddenly chaotic ballroom. In the midst of the ensuing pandemonium, with Mrs. Sterling being attended to by a hastily summoned doctor and the distinguished guests rapidly, discreetly retreating, Elena made a decision. She slipped off her apron, her movements swift, resolute, and hurried to her room. A few minutes later, with a small, battered suitcase clutched in her trembling hand and unshed tears burning in her eyes, Elena left a brief, formal resignation note in the kitchen and silently slipped out through the service door. Her brief, intoxicating dream of education, of a different life, and perhaps, just perhaps, of something more with Alexander Sterling, had ended in the most public, most humiliating, most devastating nightmare imaginable. What if the aftermath of a devastating public scandal left you standing alone, amidst the ruins of your carefully constructed life, forced to confront not just the betrayal of others, but the painful truth of your own choices? Could a desperate woman, stripped of her dreams and her dignity, find the courage to fight for a future she thought forever lost? The silence in Elena Vance's small room was absolute as she meticulously folded her last blouse, her movements almost robotic. 3 years of her life, condensed into a single, small, battered suitcase. The explosive scandal at the Sterling estate party, Mark Johnson's venomous accusations, still echoed relentlessly in her mind. A cruel, unending torment. The heavy oak door of her room opened without warning. "You're leaving without saying goodbye?" Alexander Sterling stood in the threshold, his face a mask of exhaustion, his eyes shadowed with a profound, unspoken pain. Elena closed her suitcase with a sharp, definitive click. "I have no reason to see anyone after what happened, Mr. Sterling. Least of all you. How's your mother?" "Stable," he replied, his voice flat. "It was just an anxiety attack. A severe one, but she'll recover." Alexander entered the room and closed the door behind him, a silent, unyielding presence. "You can't leave like this, Elena." "And how should I leave, Mr. Sterling?" she retorted, a bitter, sarcastic edge to her voice, surprising even herself with her own audacity. "With a marching band and confetti, perhaps?" She turned to face him, her eyes blazing with a righteous fury. "Your mother was right about me. I don't belong here. I never did." "What are you talking about?" "About this." She gestured vaguely to the opulent surroundings, to the life of unimaginable wealth and privilege that was so alien to her own. "About pretending I could study law while scrubbing floors. About thinking you," she paused, her voice catching, "that you actually saw me as an equal, as something more." Her voice broke, the carefully constructed dam of her composure finally crumbling. "But we're from different worlds, Mr. Sterling. Last night made that painfully, brutally clear." Alexander approached her, his own face etched with a raw, undeniable frustration. "And you think I don't know that? Do you think I haven't been thinking about that every single night I avoided the library? Every single time I forced myself to be cold, distant, professional?" His voice cracked, a surprising vulnerability in his usually controlled tone. "I behaved like a coward, Elena. I let my mother manipulate me, just like when I was 15, terrified of her disapproval." Elena stared at him, surprised by his unexpected confession, by the raw honesty in his eyes. She had never seen him like this, so unguarded. "About what that man said," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "Daniel Carter already told me everything about Mark Johnson." Alexander interrupted, his voice firm. "I know he was your ex-boyfriend. I know he's been harassing you. And I know his accusations are nothing but vicious, despicable lies." "Daniel? How does he know?" "He saw you arguing with Mark weeks ago," Alexander explained, a flicker of something unreadable guilt, regret, in his eyes. "He investigated and discovered Mark has a record for fraud and domestic violence. Daniel was worried about you, Elena, even when I was too busy pretending I didn't care." A soft knock on the door interrupted their intense conversation. It was Rosa, the head cook. "Sir, Miss Isabel Davenport is asking for you." Alexander nodded. "Tell her I'll be there in a moment." He turned back to Elena, his gaze pleading. "This conversation isn't over. Please, Elena, don't leave yet. Not like this." When Alexander left, Elena sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind a chaotic whirlwind of conflicting emotions. What did all of this mean? In the grand main salon, Isabel Davenport waited, her usual radiant smile replaced by an expression of genuine concern as Alexander recounted the events of the previous night. "She's a good woman, Alexander," Isabel said, her voice surprisingly soft, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "And it's clear you care deeply for her." "My mother." "Your mother will have to accept it," Isabel interrupted firmly. "Life is too short to live in pretense, Alexander. I learned that the hard way." Before leaving, she added, her voice gentle, "By the way, the girl from the staff, the one you look at with such intensity, that's the same way my Antonio used to look at me. Don't waste it, Alexander. Don't let fear or pride steal your chance at genuine happiness." Mrs. Eleanor Sterling was resting in her opulent bedroom when Alexander entered. His mother, for the first time he could remember, looked frail, vulnerable, her usual icy composure softened by the ordeal. "Did you fire her yet?" she asked without preamble, her voice weak but still laced with a hint of her old imperiousness. "No, Mother. And I'm not going to." Mrs. Sterling tried to sit up, indignant. After the scandal she caused? All our friends witnessed that vulgar, disgraceful scene. The only vulgar one was that man, Mother, not Elena, Alexander stated, his voice calm but firm, sitting on the edge of her bed. Do you know why Dad really left, Mother? The question seemed to strike Mrs. Sterling physically, her face paling. Don't you dare. It wasn't because of his secretary, as you've always claimed, Alexander continued, his voice unwavering. He left because he couldn't stand your elitism, your constant, cruel disdain for anyone who didn't come from good family, from our world. Mrs. Sterling averted her gaze, a flicker of something unreadable pain, shame, in her eyes. You don't know anything. I know everything, he responded, his voice gentle but firm. He told me before he died. He asked me not to be like you, Mother. He asked me not to judge people by their origin, but by their character. Alexander stood and pulled Elena's academic results from his pocket. Look, he said, placing the papers on her bedside table. First in her class, while working a full-time job to support her family. She has more determination, more character, more integrity, Mother, than many of our so-called refined friends. Before leaving, he added, his voice filled with a quiet, unshakable resolve. I'm going to support her in her education, Mother, with or without your approval. And if you decide to withdraw your backing for the Philadelphia project, I'll accept that. Some things, Mother, are far more important than money. What do you think of Alexander's powerful confrontation with his mother and his unwavering support for Elena? Can he truly break free from his family's rigid expectations and build a future with the woman he loves? And what will Elena do, now that she knows the depth of Alexander's feelings and the sacrifices he's willing to make for her? What if the wisest counsel came not from a powerful ally, but from the innocent, unwavering love of a younger sister? Could a simple, heartfelt conversation illuminate a path forward, empowering a woman to fight for her dreams, and perhaps, for a love that defied all expectations? Meanwhile, in Roxbury, Elena Vance recounted the devastating events of the party to her family. I can't go back there, Mom, she sobbed, the humiliation still fresh, raw. Mrs. Vance listened in silence, her heart aching for her daughter, while Elena's younger sister, Sophia, now 19 and a bright, ambitious engineering student, interjected with a surprising, almost startling wisdom. Are you giving up, Elena? Sophia challenged, her voice gentle but firm. Is it because it's too difficult? Or because you're afraid of how much you actually want him, of how much he means to you? Sophia, Mrs. Vance admonished, but the younger sister pressed on, her gaze unwavering. No, Mom, it's the truth, Sophia insisted. Elena has always been the strong one, the responsible one, the one who sacrifices everything for everyone else. But when it comes to fighting for what she truly wants, for her own happiness, she always finds excuses. She runs away. Elena looked at her sister, stunned by her perceptive, almost brutal honesty. Isn't it that simple, Elena? It never is, Sophia responded, her voice softening. But if you let Mark Johnson or Mrs. Sterling or anyone else take this opportunity away from you, then they win. They win and you lose. Is that what you want? Mrs. Vance took Elena's trembling hands in hers. Your father would be so proud of everything you've achieved, my dear, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Don't let anyone convince you that you don't deserve your dreams. Not ever. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Her family's words, Alexander's unexpected vulnerability, her own confusing, tumultuous emotions, all swirled in her mind. A relentless, chaotic storm. Perhaps Sophia was right. Perhaps she was more afraid of success, of happiness, than of failure. Because success, true happiness, meant daring to believe she truly could aspire to more. Even to something that seemed so utterly, impossibly out of reach. A future where she and Alexander Sterling weren't separated by the invisible, yet formidable barriers of social class, of wealth, of expectation. With this dawning, terrifying, yet exhilarating revelation, Elena made a decision. She would continue her studies, she would fight for her dreams, she would find another job, and she would finish her law degree, with or without Alexander's help. If destiny, if fate truly intended for her path to cross with Alexander Sterling's again, then it would have to be on different terms. As equals. As two people who had earned their place in the world, not through privilege or circumstance, but through sheer, unyielding determination. What she didn't yet know was that destiny, in its own mysterious, often surprising ways, was already hard at work, weaving new, unexpected threads into the intricate, unfolding tapestry of their lives. What do you think of Elena's courageous decision to forge her own path, to fight for her dreams on her own terms? And what about Alexander? Will he respect her choice, or will he find a way to remain a part of her life, to prove that his feelings are genuine, that his commitment is real? Share your most inspiring thoughts and heartfelt predictions in the comments below. The bustling halls of Boston College's law school teemed with activity. Students rushed between classes, their arms laden with heavy textbooks, their voices a low hum of ambition and nervous energy. Among them, Elena Vance waited her turn, mentally reviewing the documents she needed to submit for her final semester exams. 3 long months had passed since that disastrous, life-altering night at the Sterling estate. Now, she lived with her family in Roxbury and worked part-time at a small, community-focused law firm as an assistant, earning less, much less than before, but cherishing the precious time it allowed her to dedicate to her demanding studies. "Vance, Elena," the registrar's sharp voice called out. As Elena approached the counter, the woman reviewed her file, her expression suddenly, inexplicably confused. "There's a special note in your case, Ms. Vance," she said, handing Elena a thick, official-looking envelope. "It seems you have a full scholarship starting this semester. You need to go to the dean's office for the details." Elena opened the envelope, stunned, her heart pounding. It was an official letter from the Sterling Foundation for Higher Education, awarding her a full scholarship, an incredibly generous grant that included tuition, living expenses, and even a stipend for books and materials. "There must be some mistake," she murmured, her mind reeling. I didn't apply for this." "It's no mistake, Elena," a familiar, deep voice said from behind her. Elena turned, her breath catching in her throat, to find herself face to face with Alexander Sterling. He was dressed casually, in dark jeans and a simple, well-fitting sweater, a stark contrast to the impeccably tailored power suits he usually wore. He looked different, more relaxed, almost human. His dark eyes, however, still held that same unsettling intensity, that same unnerving ability to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, too surprised, too overwhelmed, to maintain her usual formal composure. "Can we talk?" he responded, gesturing towards the quiet, sun-drenched benches in the central university garden. Numbly, Elena followed him, the students rushing past, engrossed in their own academic pursuits, seemed a world away, a stark, almost painful contrast to the sudden, overwhelming chaos of her own emotions. Are you following me?" she finally asked, once they were seated, the official scholarship letter still clutched in her trembling hand. "Not exactly," Alexander responded, a faint, almost hesitant smile touching his lips. "Though I admit, it took me some time to locate you." "Why, Alexander? Why are you doing this?" He took a deep breath before answering, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the bustling university quad. "These past few months, Elena," he began, his voice low, earnest. "Away from you, away from everything. They've helped me see things with a new clarity. What my mother did, what I allowed to happen with my silence, with my inaction, it wasn't right. It was cruel, unforgivable." He paused, then turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "I've reorganized my life, Elena. I hired a full-time, highly qualified nurse for my mother. I created the Sterling Foundation to support domestic workers, like yourself, who dream of pursuing higher education, of building a better future." He offered a small, self-deprecating smile. "Inspired by you, of course." Elena processed his words slowly, her mind struggling to reconcile this new, seemingly transformed Alexander with the cold, distant, powerful man she had once known. And your mother? Is she okay with all of this? It's been difficult, Alexander admitted, a shadow passing over his face. She's in therapy. Her therapist says much of her elitism, her cruelty, stems from deep-seated insecurities, from her own unfulfilled dreams. She hasn't changed completely, not yet, but she's taking small steps. Baby steps. Elena looked at the scholarship letter in her hands, at the staggering amount, at the life-altering opportunity it represented. I can't accept this, Alexander. It would feel like I'm being bought, like you're trying to buy your affection, he completed, his voice gentle, understanding. That's why the scholarship is managed by an independent committee, Elena. You earned it solely on your academic merits, on your unwavering determination. I merely suggested your name, anonymously, of course. An uncomfortable, yet not entirely unpleasant, silence settled between them. I have a different proposal for you, Elena, Alexander continued, his voice gaining a new, quiet confidence. The foundation needs a director, someone who truly, deeply understands the challenges, the struggles of studying while working, of fighting against overwhelming odds. Someone with first-hand personal experience and a brilliant legal mind. Someone, he paused, his gaze intense, unwavering, someone exactly like you. Elena stared at him, stunned, speechless. Are you offering me a job, Alexander? I'm offering you an opportunity, Elena, he responded, his voice soft but firm. An opportunity to build something truly significant, to help countless others like yourself. With a fair, very competitive salary, of course. You could finish your studies, gain invaluable professional experience, and make a real, tangible difference in the world. All on your own terms. Elena looked away, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, considering his unexpected, almost unbelievable proposition. And us? She finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. What would happen with this? She gestured vaguely to the unspoken, yet undeniable connection that still simmered between them. That, Elena? Alexander responded, his voice gentle, his eyes filled with a profound, hopeful sincerity. Depends entirely on you. I don't want you to feel obligated to anything, to anyone. If you decide to work at the foundation, it would be as my equal, as my respected colleague, not as my employee. And certainly, he paused, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, not as my mistress. What do you think of Alexander's incredible offer and his apparent transformation? Can Elena truly trust him this time, or is this another, more sophisticated form of manipulation? And what about their undeniable connection? Could this be the beginning of a true, equal partnership, both professionally and personally? Share your most insightful predictions and passionate opinions in the comments below. What if the path to a brighter future was unexpectedly intertwined with a hidden connection from the past, forcing two souls, once separated by circumstance, to confront not just their present feelings, but the surprising, almost fated, ways their lives had already, unknowingly, converged? Elena Vance looked away, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, as she considered Alexander Sterling's almost unbelievable proposition. There's something else you should know, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper, a new layer of complexity entering her already tumultuous thoughts. I've been offered an internship at the labor rights organization in downtown Boston. It's a unique opportunity, a chance to make a real difference. Alexander's expression shifted from surprise to a genuine, unforced smile. That's wonderful, Elena. You should absolutely accept it. You really think so? She asked, genuinely taken aback by his enthusiastic, unselfish response. Absolutely, he affirmed, his eyes shining with a surprising, almost paternal pride. In fact, he paused, a strange, almost thoughtful expression on his face. It's rather odd that you mention it. Alexander reached into his worn leather satchel, a far cry from the expensive Italian briefcases he used to carry, and pulled out a thick, aged folder. "I found this among my father's old papers," he explained, handing it to her. "They're records of anonymous donations he made for years to that very same labor rights organization." Elena reviewed the documents with a growing sense of stunned disbelief. "I also discovered," Alexander continued, his voice a low, thoughtful murmur, "that he established a special fund, specifically for law students from Roxbury and other underserved Boston neighborhoods. It seems, Elena," he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, "that our paths were perhaps destined to cross in some way long before we ever truly met." A passing student, rushing to class, accidentally bumped into Elena, sending her carefully organized notes scattering across the university garden path, breaking the intense, almost surreal intimacy of the moment. As they both knelt to gather the fallen papers, their hands brushed briefly, a fleeting, accidental contact that sent an unexpected jolt of electricity through both of them. "You know what's the strangest thing, Elena?" Alexander said, his voice a little hoarse as he looked up at her, their faces just inches apart. "When you resigned, when you walked out of my life, I felt like I had lost my only chance to truly change, to become a better man. And now," he paused, his gaze intense, unwavering, "now I see that it was necessary, that I had to lose everything, to confront my own demons, to find my own real path, before I could ever hope to truly connect with someone like you. Sometimes," Alexander continued, his voice barely a whisper, "you have to lose something incredibly valuable to finally, truly gain something utterly priceless." He looked at her then, his eyes filled with a raw, undeniable vulnerability. "My father used to say that. I never understood what he meant. Until now." They looked at each other in silence, a profound, unspoken understanding growing between them, a fragile bridge across the vast, once impassable chasm that had separated their disparate worlds. "So, what do you say, Elena?" Alexander finally asked, his voice a hopeful murmur. "Would you accept the internship? And perhaps, just perhaps, after that, consider directing the Sterling Foundation? Building something truly meaningful, something lasting, together?" Elena smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes, illuminating her entire face, for the very first time since he had known her. "I think, Alexander," she said, her voice clear, strong, filled with a newfound, unshakable confidence, "it's time we started building bridges instead of just seeing walls, don't you?" His own answering smile was blinding. "Welcome to your new chapter, Counselor Vance," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Elena took his outstretched hand, feeling with a profound, almost dizzying certainty that something fundamental, something irrevocable, had shifted. They were no longer the maid and the master, the benefactor and the beneficiary. They were two people, flawed and imperfect, choosing to walk forward together, to build something new, something real on a foundation far stronger, far more authentic, than the rigid, outdated social structures that had once tried and failed to keep them apart. What neither of them knew, what neither of them could possibly anticipate, was that destiny, in its own mysterious, often ironic way, still had one more surprising, life-altering twist in store for them. A revelation that would change their lives, their futures, forever. What if the greatest act of faith wasn't believing in a perfect future, but in the messy, imperfect, yet breathtakingly beautiful journey of building one together, one courageous step, one shared dream at a time? December draped Boston in a glittering blanket of festive Christmas lights. In the bustling offices of the Labor Rights Organization, Elena Vance meticulously organized case files, her mind sharp, her movements efficient, her presence a quiet force of unwavering dedication. The past 6 months, since her unexpected, almost surreal reunion with Alexander Sterling in the university garden, had been a whirlwind of profound change and exhilarating growth. The internship had proven to be even more challenging, and infinitely more rewarding, than she could have ever imagined. And though she saw Alexander regularly, their relationship, carefully, deliberately, maintained a respectful, professional boundary, slowly, cautiously evolving into something more personal, something deeper, something undeniably real. Nervous about the presentation, Elena? Daniela Ramirez, her mentor at the organization, a seasoned lawyer with a fierce passion for justice, asked, noticing Elena's focused intensity. A little, Elena admitted, a faint smile touching her lips. It's not every day you defend your first real case in front of a judge. It had been a long, arduous journey. The Sterling Foundation Scholarship had allowed her to dedicate herself fully to her studies, to excel in her classes, and this internship, this chance to truly make a difference, was the culmination of years of relentless hard work, of unwavering, often solitary determination. The small labor tribunal was packed. Elena, dressed in a simple yet elegant formal suit, a thoughtful, almost imperceptible gift from her sister Sophia, who was now thriving in her own engineering studies thanks to Alexander's quiet, behind-the-scenes support, took a deep, steadying breath before presenting her case. "Your Honor," she began, her voice, once so timid, now resonating with a quiet, compelling authority. "My client worked for 18 long years as a domestic employee without a contract, without benefits, without defined working hours, her basic human rights systematically, cruelly ignored. Among the small crowd of observers, Alexander Sterling watched her, his heart swelling with an immense, almost overwhelming pride. Beside him, surprisingly, sat Mrs. Eleanor Sterling, Alexander's mother, leaning heavily on her ornate cane, her gaze fixed intently on Elena, her expression a complex mixture of stern scrutiny and a dawning, reluctant respect. When the judge finally ruled in favor of the domestic worker, a landmark decision, the courtroom erupted in applause. It was a small victory, yes, but a profoundly significant one. "Congratulations, Counselor Vance," Alexander said, his voice filled with genuine admiration, as they met in the bustling hallway outside the courtroom. "You were brilliant. I didn't expect to see you here," Elena responded, a warm blush rising on her cheeks, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and triumph. She glanced towards Mrs. Sterling, who approached them slowly, her usual icy composure softened by a hint of something unreadable. "Your argumentation was interesting, Miss Vance," the elderly matriarch said, her voice, though still formal, lacking its usual sharp edge. "Alexander insisted I come. He said it would help me understand." It was the closest thing to a compliment Mrs. Sterling could perhaps ever offer, and Elena accepted it with a gracious, understanding smile. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Sterling." The inaugural gala of the Sterling Foundation was held in an elegant historic hotel in downtown Boston. As the newly appointed executive director, Elena meticulously supervised every detail, ensuring the event was not just a glittering social gathering, but a true testament to the Foundation's mission of empowerment and social justice. Her own family occupied a central table, including Sophia, who was now excelling in her medical studies, her path made possible by the first scholarship awarded by the very foundation her sister now led. Mrs. Vance, Elena's mother, her eyes shining with unshed tears of pride, watched her daughter command the room with an effortless grace and quiet authority. "This foundation," Elena explained to the captivated audience from the podium, her voice clear, resonant, was born from a simple, late-night conversation. A conversation that proved that when we stop seeing differences and start building bridges, the impossible, the unimaginable, becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Her gaze swept across the room and met Alexander's, a silent, shared understanding passing between them, a testament to their own improbable journey. That night, after the last of the distinguished guests had departed, Alexander led her to the grand library of the Sterling estate, the room that had, in so many ways, been the silent witness to the beginning of their extraordinary story. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, her voice a soft whisper, her heart pounding with a familiar, yet new, anticipation. "I thought we were going to celebrate with the others," she added, a hint of playful accusation in her tone. The library was illuminated with a soft, warm glow, reminiscent of those first, stolen late-night study sessions. In the center of the room, on the antique mahogany desk where they had shared so many hushed, heartfelt conversations, lay an old, leather-bound book. "This place," Alexander explained, his voice a low, intimate murmur, "is where I truly saw you for the first time, Elena. Not as a member of my staff, not as a scholarship recipient, but as the brilliant, determined, courageous woman you are." Elena gently caressed the worn spines of the books lining the shelves, a wave of nostalgia, of profound gratitude, washing over her. "It feels like another lifetime," she whispered. The timid maid, studying in secret, and the powerful, enigmatic master of the house, unexpectedly discovering her. "Don't use those words, Elena," Alexander requested, stepping closer, his voice soft, earnest. "You were never just a maid. And I—" He paused, a self-deprecating smile touching his lips. "Never truly wanted to be the master." He picked up the old book from the desk and handed it to her. "It was my father's," he explained, his voice thick with emotion. "His first civil code, filled with all his personal annotations, his dreams for a more equitable world." As Elena opened the worn volume, a small, velvet-covered box nestled amongst its fragile pages caught her eye. Her heart skipped a beat. Alexander took the box from her trembling hands and, with a reverence that took her breath away, knelt before her. "Elena Vance," he began, his voice raw with emotion, his dark eyes shining with an undeniable, profound love. "I first fell in love with your brilliant mind, then with your unwavering determination, and finally, irrevocably, with every single, beautiful part of you. Would you do me the extraordinary honor," he paused, his voice catching, "of building a life with me? As equals, as partners, as family?" With trembling fingers, Elena took the simple yet elegant ring from the box, its single, flawless diamond catching the soft library light. "Yes," she whispered, tears of pure, unadulterated happiness streaming down her face. "Yes, Alexander. I want that more than anything." In the doorway of the library, observing them discreetly, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling watched the scene unfold. Her expression was unreadable, a complex mixture of emotions, but when Alexander looked up and met her gaze, she offered a slow, almost imperceptible nod before quietly retreating. It was a small gesture, yes, but it signified more than 1,000 words. A silent acknowledgement that her son had chosen well, that perhaps she had been wrong, and that some traditions, some outdated notions of class and suitability, deserved to be challenged, to be broken, to make way for something new, something better, something real. As Alexander and Elena embraced in the quiet sanctuary of the library, surrounded by the silent, wisdom-filled presence of generations of books, both knew they had shattered walls that had once seemed impenetrable. Not just the walls between them, but also the invisible yet formidable barriers that society so often erects to separate people based on their origin, their education, or their economic position. That night, under the soft, warm glow of the library lamps, a space that had once been a secret refuge, and was now the sacred stage for a new, breathtaking beginning, they sealed a promise that extended far beyond romantic love. It was a promise to build, together, a world where more people could cross the bridges they themselves had so courageously, so improbably, begun to construct. And in the distance, as if from some unseen, benevolent realm, the spirit of Alexander's father smiled, witnessing the beautiful, powerful continuation of his own quiet legacy of justice and equality. Now, finally, in the capable, loving hands of his transformed son and the extraordinary, inspiring woman he had chosen as his partner in life, in love, in purpose. What if the greatest legacy wasn't an empire built on wealth, but a family founded on love, forgiveness, and the quiet courage to choose each other every single day, proving that true happiness is found not in grand pronouncements, but in the simple, profound beauty of a life shared, a purpose embraced. 5 years had passed since that pivotal moment in the Sterling Estate Library. The Sterling Vance Manor, as everyone now affectionately called their beautiful Boston home, was no longer a silent, opulent showpiece, but a vibrant, welcoming sanctuary filled with laughter, love, and the joyful chaos of family life. In the sun-drenched garden, under the shade of a magnificent, ancient oak tree, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling watched as her 3-year-old grandson, Ethan Monroe Sterling, chased a brightly colored butterfly, his delighted giggles echoing in the warm afternoon air. He had Elena's sparkling dark eyes and Alexander's determined chin, a perfect, beautiful blend of them both. "Grandma, look!" the little boy shouted, proudly showing her a fallen oak leaf, his small face beaming. Mrs. Sterling smiled, a genuine, unforced expression that had become more frequent, more natural, with each passing year. The aristocratic woman who had once looked down upon a domestic employee with such cold disdain was now, to the surprise of many, a doting, deeply affectionate grandmother. "It's beautiful, my love," she responded, carefully tucking the leaf into her pocket as if it were a precious, priceless treasure. From the terrace, Elena Vance Sterling, now a respected lawyer specializing in labor rights, watched the scene, a quiet contentment settling over her as she reviewed documents for an upcoming case. At 32, she exuded an aura of quiet confidence and profound compassion, her presence a testament to her unwavering resilience. Her law firm, though small, was incredibly influential, having already won several landmark cases that had significantly changed legislation for domestic workers across the state. "Working on a Sunday?" Alexander Sterling asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his familiar embrace a comforting warmth. "I thought we agreed to rest on weekends." "Just reviewing the final details for the Torres case," she replied, leaning back into his chest, the scent of his cologne a familiar, reassuring comfort. "Tomorrow is the final hearing." The Torres case, ironically, had no relation to her abusive ex-boyfriend, Mark Johnson, but involved a family of agricultural workers fighting for their basic human rights. It was exactly the kind of case that fueled her passion, her unwavering commitment to justice. "How are Daniel Carter and Isabel Davenport doing?" she asked, changing the subject, her thoughts drifting to their close friends. "When are they back from their honeymoon in Argentina?" "In an hour," Alexander responded, a warm smile in his voice. "They're bringing photos. Can you believe Daniel, the eternal bachelor, finally settled down? And with Isabel, of all people." Life indeed had a curious, often ironic way of intertwining destinies. The doorbell rang, announcing the first arrival. It wasn't Daniel and Isabel, but Mrs. Vance, Elena's mother, now retired thanks to her daughter's unwavering support, and Sophia Vance, Elena's younger sister, who had just graduated with honors in medicine, her path made possible by the Sterling Foundation. They entered, laden with homemade pastries and joyful chatter. "Aunt Sophia!" Ethan shrieked, running from the garden to embrace his favorite aunt. Sophia, her white doctor's coat still pristine from her morning hospital rounds, scooped him up in her arms. "How's my favorite little scientist? Still collecting insects?" Mrs. Vance approached Mrs. Sterling, who was slowly, gracefully, making her way from the garden with the help of her cane. The two grandmothers, once separated by an insurmountable social abyss, now shared a genuine, heartfelt affection, united by their shared adoration for their grandson. "I brought you that herbal tea I mentioned, Eleanor," Mrs. Vance said, handing her a small, fragrant package. "It will help with your arthritis." "Thank you, Mercedes," Mrs. Sterling responded, her voice filled with a sincere gratitude. "Your previous remedy worked better than any of the doctor's medications." As the two older women exchanged quiet confidences and health tips, Rosa, the head cook, who still managed the Sterling Vance household but now with a formal contract and full benefits, announced that lunch was ready. In the grand main dining room, where once only formal, stilted dinners with suitable guests were served, a diverse, vibrant family now gathered. The antique mahogany table, which had witnessed so many cold, elitist conversations, now resonated with warm laughter, heartfelt anecdotes from Sophia's hospital shifts, stories from Elena's challenging legal cases, and Alexander's enthusiastic updates on his company's increasingly successful sustainable housing projects, a passion he had discovered and embraced thanks to Elena. Between toasts and lively conversations, Elena and Alexander exchanged knowing, complicit glances. 5 years of marriage had not diminished the spark between them. It had, in fact, been fanned into a steady, enduring flame, fueled by mutual respect, shared purpose, and an unwavering admiration for each other's work, each other's dreams. After lunch, as the others settled in the living room, eagerly awaiting Daniel and Isabel's arrival, Alexander led Elena to the library. This space, their shared sanctuary, still held a special magic for them, though now, the leather-bound law books mingled comfortably with colorful children's storybooks and well-loved parenting guides. "I have something for you," Alexander said, handing her an official-looking envelope. Inside were documents confirming that the Sterling Vance Foundation had been internationally recognized for its profound impact on workers' education. They had already helped over 100 domestic employees obtain university degrees, empowering them to build brighter, more secure futures. "This is amazing, Alexander," Elena murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "We started with just 5 scholarships, and this is just the beginning," Alexander completed, his eyes shining with pride. "The governor wants to replicate our model throughout the entire state." They sat on the same worn leather sofa where, years ago, they had shared hesitant conversations, she as a determined student, he as an unexpected, almost reluctant, mentor. "Do you remember that first night I found you studying in the kitchen?" Alexander asked, his voice a low, nostalgic murmur. "How could I forget?" Elena smiled, a soft, reminiscent glow in her eyes. "I was so sure you were going to fire me, and he confessed, his voice filled with a profound tenderness, was utterly, completely fascinated to discover that the quiet, unassuming woman who meticulously cleaned my house knew more about jurisprudence than I did. They laughed together, a warm, shared sound, acutely aware of the long, improbable, yet beautiful journey they had traveled. "Love doesn't eliminate barriers, Alexander," Elena reflected, intertwining her fingers with her husband's. "It just builds bridges to cross them." Together, a joyful shriek interrupted their quiet moment. Ethan burst into the library, followed closely by Sophia. "Daddy, Mommy, Aunt Sophia is going to teach me how to use a real stethoscope." Elena scooped up her son, her heart swelling with an immeasurable love, thinking of how many doors would now open for him, doors that had once been so cruelly, so unjustly, closed to her. Not because he was the son of a wealthy architect, but because he would grow up knowing that his true worth didn't depend on his origin, his social class, but on his humanity, his compassion, his unwavering belief in the power of dreams. Outside, the gardens that Elena had once tended as an employee, she now enjoyed as the cherished mistress of the house. Not because she had married well, as society might whisper, but because she had, against all odds, earned her place in the world through her own relentless effort, her undeniable talent, her unwavering determination. The tired, cliched story of the millionaire and the maid had, in their lives, evolved into something far deeper, far more meaningful. The inspiring story of two human beings who, against all odds, found in each other not just love, but the profound inspiration to build a more just, more compassionate world. And as the sun began to set over Boston, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of rose and gold, illuminating the mansion where once social differences had seemed so insurmountable, a new generation was learning that true values resided not in last names or bank accounts, but in the unwavering capacity to see the other as an equal, to build bridges where others only saw walls, and to believe, with an unshakable conviction, that love, when it is authentic, when it is true, can transform not just two people but an entire community, an entire world. This powerful story of Elena and Alexander reminds us that love can blossom in the most unexpected places, and that with courage, determination, and a willingness to see beyond the surface, we can overcome any obstacle and build a future filled with shared dreams and profound happiness. Their journey teaches us that true wealth isn't measured in riches, but in the richness of the human heart, and the enduring legacy of kindness and compassion we leave behind. If their incredible story touched your heart, if you believe in the transformative power of second chances and the enduring strength of the human spirit, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration, and comment below with your favorite moment from their inspiring journey. What part of their story resonated with you the most? And of course, Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that celebrate the resilience of the human heart and the beautiful, unexpected ways love can find us. We'd also love to know, where are you watching this story from today? Your voices, your experiences, enrich our global community. Let's keep building bridges of understanding and hope, one story at a time.